I think the number one thing is that people have a lot of misconceptions about what assisted living is. And they look at it in a maybe what they saw in the movies or TV shows in a decrepit old hospital where they're propping someone in front of a TV. Instead, it's really trying to build a community, an atmosphere, a social climate for someone to thrive in, as opposed to what they're currently doing, which may be sitting at home in front of a TV, not really doing much all day.
What if the biggest real estate decisions your family ever makes isn't about buying or selling a home, but deciding when it's time to move a loved one into assisted living? And here's the hard truth. Most families wait too long. They wait until there's a fall, a hospital visit, or a crisis that forces the decision. But what if you could see the signs earlier, understand your options, and actually find affordable, high quality senior living in Florida without the confusion, stress, and hidden costs? Today, we're breaking down the reality of assisted living, memory care, and the massive gap in the middle market and how one operator is transforming underperforming facilities into thriving communities. Welcome back to the Real Estate Roundtable. Today's guest is someone who stepped into a space most investors overlook, but one that impacts nearly every family at some point. Doug Halperin is the founder of Elevated Estates, a Florida-based assisted living operator focused on solving one of the biggest challenges in senior housing: how to deliver quality care that's actually affordable for the middle market. But Doug didn't just build something new. He saw opportunity where others saw problems. He's built his business around acquiring underperforming assisted living facilities and transforming them from the inside out, improving operations, elevating care, and creating real communities for residents and staff. At the core of it, Doug isn't just in real estate. He's in the business of restoring dignity, trust, and quality of life in senior living. And today he's going to walk us through the emotional decisions families face, the hidden realities of the senior care industry, and how to actually find the right solution before it is too late. Doug, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. Looking forward.
Hey, Doug, let's start with the moment most families avoid. When does it really become clear that it's time to consider assisted living?
So, a lot of this really depends on the family dynamic and really the different circumstances. Unfortunately, with a lot of families, it's while a loved one is in the hospital and they are nearing time to be discharged, nearing time to be leaving a rehab center or something along those lines, and it's all hands on deck to try and find something very quickly. Sometimes it is a longer process to understand what's going to be right for a parent, an uncle, grandma, sibling, and you're able to do a little bit more research. It's really understanding when that time frame is for someone to understand, and so it's being able to see what the signs are.
And what are the early signs that people tend to ignore until it becomes too urgent?
Typically when people start needing a level of care, a level of help, whether that's a loved one coming in and helping or a home health aide or something along those lines. But if you find yourself in a situation where you constantly feel worried, nervous, that you have to check in on someone, that's probably a moment to really start thinking about it.
And could you walk us through what that emotional turning point looks like for a family?
It's definitely a very difficult process, and it's difficult for a lot of reasons. I think the number one thing is that people have a lot of misconceptions about what assisted living is. And they look at it in a maybe what they saw in the movies or TV shows in a sort of decrepit old hospital where they're propping someone in front of a TV. Instead, it's really trying to build a community, an atmosphere, a social climate for someone to thrive in, as opposed to what they're currently doing, which may be sitting at home in front of a TV, not really doing much all day.
Yeah, and why do you think so many families wait too long to make the move?
Nervous about having the conversation, right? Someone might feel like they are losing independence or that they're being removed from their home. But again, a lot of that sort of reluctance because of a lot of preconceived notions and issues with what assisted living could look like and what the other residents what their contemporaries are going to be in this property.
And have you seen situations where waiting too long made things significantly harder?
It definitely makes things harder because obviously you're on a shorter time frame, right? When it's all hands on deck and you need to make a decision in a matter of days, or it could literally be even a number of hours, obviously that's going to be a more rushed decision as opposed to being able to have time, see the options, visit properties, see the different types of atmospheres that you can be gearing to, as well as putting your finances together so you can properly understand what these dynamics are. This is a completely new experience for almost everyone, and it's something that people usually know almost nothing about. And yet it's a very big decision, an important one, and a financially important one to understand.
Once a family decides to explore options, they're hit with terms like assisted living, memory care, independent living. Can you break down the real differences in simple terms?
Sure. So if I'm thinking about this sort of in a way of an apartment complex or even a hotel, right? A independent living is really the way it sounds, which is independent living. It's people that are able to function solely on their own. They might have a home health care aide or things like that, but that would be all really facilitated by themselves. As opposed to just a regular apartment building, the differences would be there might be purpose-built items like railings and showers, pull cords, things like that. There's also going to be something like an activities director, and people just create a social life that obviously you wouldn't typically see in an apartment building that's geared toward 20, 30, and 40-year-olds. And so that's like the first level of senior care. Then you scale up to assisted living. And assisted living has these different subsets, but what assisted living really is an apartment with shared home health aides. Right, so a lot of people know what a home health aide is, right? Someone that comes over for, it could be 2 hours a day, it could be 24 hours a day, but someone that's going to help you with your daily routine and daily living. And so instead of having this just be one-on-one, now this is going to be in an environment where it's shared, where there's a larger community there. All of your housekeeping is going to be taken care of, all of your meals are going to be taken care of. Again, there's going to be activities and all of these things to really create a community dynamic. And then within assisted living, there are different subsets like memory care or limited mental health, where a regular assisted living facility, residents are 100% free to come and go as they please. However, obviously, someone with dementia, someone with Alzheimer's, something along those lines, they would be a danger to themselves and potentially others if they were to leave on their own recognizance. And so to be prepared for memory care, that typically means that either a floor or the entire building is locked without residents able to leave just by themselves. And then from there, you go a scale up into what's called skilled nursing, and that is a very different environment. That's a little bit more of a medical environment where there's actual medical billing, there's insurance, Medicare, and things along those lines, and is a much more acute style of care than the first two subsets.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, clarifying that. It opens up a world. What's the biggest misconception families have when they start researching senior housing options in Florida?
I think it's really what it's going to look like when they're there. What is the environment going to be? Am I just putting my loved one somewhere to say goodbye and not see them? And that's really not what this is supposed to be. What it really is ideally supposed to be is a place, again, where you can have friends, you can have relationships, where there's a lot of people that are of a similar age, mind, and everything else bracket that you can build a community with. That there's people to, yes, care for you, but more importantly, in many ways, there's contemporaries that you are able to speak with, that you're able to use your mind, that you're able to be a part of something that's bigger than just being on your own. And really understanding that this isn't a hospital setting where someone's going to be in one of those beds that you push the button and it goes up and down. You're in your own environment. You're going to be, and this is something that not a lot of people know, many times you're usually bringing your own furniture. You're bringing your own bed and dresser and things like that, and you're really able to set up your living space like it is your home because it is your home. And then the public areas are really where it's a lot more shared and where you're going to be congregating with other residents.
Oh, I'd like that right now. How does someone even begin navigating this fragmented market without getting overwhelmed?
So there's definitely a lot of different ways to understand it, and it also, again, will depend a lot on what the circumstances are. Some of it is as simple as just like anywhere else you would do research, right? Going into Google and doing search. a lot of word of mouth, right? Speaking with friends and family that have gone through something similar in the past and might know people in the area. And then there's a lot of different people that are connectors that will understand what the reputation is of different properties around. And that's going to be doctors and nurses, people at rehab centers, and things like that. There's also placement agencies that you can work with that can show you a full subset of different options. And those people are going to be paid by the property, not by the potential resident or their family. And really just going through this process, there's a lot of different ways to understand what's right for you.
If you had to simplify it, what's the first step a family should take when starting their search?
Understand what the needs, wants, and financial capabilities are. What are you looking for? Because that's going to dictate everything. There are so many options out there, right? Anywhere from places that are very small. There are assisted living facilities that are 3, 4, 5 beds that are in someone's house to places that are 100, 200, 300, 400. And so understanding the type of environment that you want to be in, what kind of amenities that you're being requested, and those kind of things, as well as, of course, understanding what are the financial components, which can be very complicated.
Gotcha. That's a solid answer. Let's talk about something people don't realize until they're in it. Why is affordable assisted living in Florida so hard to find?
So it's definitely not just a Florida problem. It is a problem across the board. And look, affordability is what is on everyone's mind. So all of the things that anybody thinks about when they think about affordability for themselves are the same things that you're going to see when you're thinking about affordability for an assisted living facility, right? When you go to the grocery store and you're seeing the price of all of these things, obviously at assisted living, they're preparing all your meals. So those are all things, all of these components are changes to the dynamic and where these costs are. And so a lot of the properties that are being built now, which there's been a massive downturn in terms of development, which is a whole other part of the conversation, but a lot of the newer facilities are places that are going to be charging $7, $8, $10, $12, $15,000 a month, plus maybe major introductory charges and things like that. And finding something that's affordable where you're, and is not just affordable, but is a place that you want to be, right? There are lots of places that are very inexpensive, but you wouldn't want to send a loved one there. You wouldn't want to send your friend there, right? And so finding the places that are, yes, they are affordable, they're in that middle market, but they're also able to provide good quality food, good quality care, a nice environment, a clean environment, updated amenities, and a great place to live. That's really the key and is the most difficult part.
And then why is affordable assisted living in Florida so hard to find?
Because the economics of running an assisted living facility are difficult. There are a lot of costs involved, a lot of things that people don't understand, a lot of things that people don't see that are behind the scenes. And the margins are not very high. And so when you're trying to be able to create a great place for people to live while paying $2,500 to $4,500 a month, that certainly comes with a lot of challenges and a lot of dynamics that you really have to work at to make sure that not only are you able to provide this great place for someone to live, but that also on the business side that you're able to run a successful business and make sure that you can maintain that business for the future and continue providing the care.
You focus on the middle market. What exactly does that mean, and why is it so underserved?
So the reason why that we've really focused on is that we saw that this was really the biggest area of need. That there certainly are a lot of high-end places, and there's also low-end places that, as we say, we would never want to send a grandparent, we would never want to send a loved one there. And so the middle market is where you have people that still do have some resources, right? Whether that's from the individual that's going to be living there or from the family. And we're able to put together a package that is affordable, that you're able to take care of someone that you love while still being able to afford that care. And there's a lot of dynamics in finances that people don't understand. We can also get into the Medicaid aspect and different programs that people can qualify for, and a lot of things that we work very hard to make sure that we are working with people so that this is a lot easier of an ask and it is a great place to be.
That's awesome, man. Thanks for doing that. Where do families typically get caught off guard when it comes to senior living costs?
So the dynamics of how the costs are built in can be very confusing. A lot of times you'll look online. First of all, a lot of places do not showcase their pricing for a variety of different reasons. And then there's also a lot where even when they do, it'll say things like starting at $2,500. And then I'll be like, wow, $2,500, that seems like that's right within my budget. But then there's a slew of costs that are not being shown that are going to, most of them 100% happen, and some of them are for higher levels of care, but you might really not have any idea. And these are not things like, oh, it's $50, $100 a month. It could be care costs that are $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 more per month that can completely change the dynamic of what you're looking for. And so that opaque pricing can be very difficult, and also it can change over time. Because maybe a level of care changes and hey, we were great for $3,200, now something changed and now it's $4,200 and we don't have the wherewithal. We don't want to move grandma, she's having a great time, she's been there for a year and a half, and now we have to pick up and leave because we can't afford it.
Gotcha. And could you elaborate more on those hidden fees and pricing structures people should be watching for when they're looking at these places?
So when someone comes in, regardless of the property, there's always going to be an evaluation process. Some of that is going to come from outside the property, right? There's going to be doctors that are going to fill out 1823 forms and other things like that. They're going to provide the what are the needs, what are the ADLs, and what kind of activities can this person participate in, and what do they need help with. And this is very important for the assisted living properties so that they can make sure that they're providing the right kind of care, that they're set up, and that they're appropriate for this resident. And so what you'll see is, again, and there's some things within this scene are objective, and there's also a lot that's subjective into what level of care you fall into. And so that could be, a lot of places will have sort of 4 levels of care, and each one could be $1,000 bump in between them. And obviously that could be a very big difference if you're like, we were really good even for the first level of care, but now we're at level 2, and then again, a year later, something changes, and now we're at level 3 or level 4, and you're in a completely different bracket and no longer able to properly afford it.
So basically, if you look at the levels and you say, I can swing level 4, no matter what, you're good with the place basically throughout the whole term of grandma being there. But if you look at the levels and you can't afford 4, you should look for another place basically, that where you can afford it. Or figure out how to negotiate that. I don't know, do you negotiate these things?
Look, it's like most other things, everything can be negotiated. One of the things that we really try and do is just have all-in pricing. So we don't really deal with levels of care. And try and make it as transparent as possible.
That's
right?
Awesome.
Someone's coming in at this dire moment of need and trying to figure everything out, right? Maybe you have pensions, you've got a home possibly to sell, you have Social Security, X number of assets, all of these kinds of things. And so trying to understand what the monthly budget is certainly very important. And again, then there's the whole, especially in the affordable space, the whole Medicaid section of who can, and Medicaid is really more, think like a Section 8 voucher. It's not, when people think of Medicaid, they think of insurance, health insurance programs for people who aren't able to afford it. When it comes to assisted living, Medicaid is basically a rental voucher that if you have certain income qualifications that you're able to receive. It can depend both on the program you're in and the area you're in, but it's usually about $1,200 to $1,800 per month that would go to defraying the cost of what your rent is. Now, not every single place will accept this, but certainly a lot, and we do in the middle market, right, to try and make things, again, affordable, right? Let's say you're trying to get to $3,000 a month. If you can get $1,600 from Medicaid, $900 from Social Security, all of a sudden, right, now it's not so unaffordable, and whether that's a little bit of a pension or kids or relatives putting in $500 a month, now it's obviously a lot more affordable.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's the difference between luxury and low-end properties or care systems?
Sure. Look, a lot of these things are going to be similar to what do you see in a hotel? What do you see in a multifamily property, right? What are the finishes going to be? So if you're talking luxury high-end, it's going to be luxury high-end. It's going to be a property that was built relatively recently. You're going to see, you could see marble floorings and beautiful finishes and lighting and all of the upgrades and beautiful bathroom vanities and all of sort of the fixings that you would expect to see at a very high-end type multifamily property. that'll also come obviously on the food as well, right? Maybe you're ordering different types of steaks every night and things along those lines, right? You're going to hopefully 4 or 5 star type of restaurants. The care level, the care staff, right? There could even be things like massages and stuff like that would be outside of the scope of somewhere else. But those are, if you're thinking about really, again, what does a high-end hotel look like versus a 5 star place versus a 3 star place, that's what you're looking at.
Okay, got you. That makes sense. You built your business around acquiring underperforming properties. What do you see that others miss?
So typically it's the way that they're being managed and where they're being managed from, right? We've really taken the approach that assisted living is a very relationship based area. And so we're working on properties where we're at them regularly, right? We're always coming there. We're always on boots on the ground, and we want to understand and touch and feel our properties to make sure that things are being run successfully. A lot of times when you see things going south, it's usually larger out-of-state operators that maybe, especially in Florida, maybe they had big plans in Florida and then it didn't quite happen. They were going to own 10 assets and now they only own 1 or 2. And so the economies of scale aren't really there and they can't really take the time or put the energy into it. And so all of a sudden your costs are skyrocketing and you're not making the local relationships with a lot of these connectors to make sure that your occupancy and census are doing well and people actually want to come to your property.
Yeah, that is so truthful. Can you walk us through one transformation story from struggling facility to thriving community?
Sure. So when we're typically looking at a property, there's usually 3 touch points that we'll see, and many times it's a combination of these 3, right? It's going to be that the occupancy is low, it's going to be that the expenses are too high, and potentially that there's a lot of CapEx that's needed, right? A lot of to the actual physical property. And that's one of the big things that you want to see in a well-run middle market property is it's not run down, right? You want it to be a lively place that's been well taken care of. And so we'll typically, again, see this combination where occupancy in the area is at 90%, occupancy of the property instead is at 65%, right? Oh. These are the expenses that are in line with the market and our other properties. And here's a lot of contracts and things that are unnecessary and a bloated expenses or just poor management practices. And then again, it's doing whether that's a full-scale renovation like we've done at one of our properties, which was multi-million-dollar renovation to completely turn over a property that did look like an old hospital-style place, to much more targeted CapEx where you're going over the areas that are outdated and upgrading the amenities and making sure that everything is really up to date and sort of looks great.
So what are the first changes you make when you take over a property?
So the immediate changes are really bringing our best practices in management into the infrastructure. We very strongly believe that the best way to create a property is by having a happy property. And that starts with the employees. Right? Happy employees that are excited to go to work are going to be people that are going to take great care of the residents. And then that in turn will make residents happy and that will bring more occupancy and everything else will, again, continue to fall into place. And so we really want to instill a new culture where we care and there's accountability and we really want these properties to thrive both in an economic sense and especially in a communal sense. And coming in and really setting those things up from day one is important to understand where things should be done and what things need to be changed and to really get buy-in from the staff to make sure that those things are being implemented effectively.
You also focus heavily on relationships with healthcare providers. How does that impact residents' care and outcomes?
This is a very relationship-based business. So whether that's with people coming in or once they're already there, right? We're certainly providing care for our residents, but there's also a lot, again, that's outside of us. Right, we're not, assisted living is not a healthcare in the aspect of there's no doctors on staff, right? They're not performing that level of care. So it's helping residents to ensure that both are getting the right care while they're with us, but also making sure that things are set up well for them, that they're able to because those are going to be their own decisions in terms of the care that they receive outside, but making sure that those right systems are in place.
So let's make this practical for listeners. When someone is touring a facility, what should they actually be looking for beyond the brochure?
Sure. So how do you see behind the curtain? How do you understand what this is going to be on a day-to-day life? Number one is just take a look at how people look, right? Do the residents look happy? Does the person that's touring you look happy, right? Do the employees seem like they want to be there? A lot of times what you'll see is you're walking around on a tour and a resident needs help. Is the person who's touring you around going to take an extra second to not just be selling you, but to help someone who's in need for 30 seconds? Is there care about the physical property? Right? A lot of times things can be run down, things can smell, things cannot look great, and that's not just going to be the physical property, right? People that take care of the physical property are going to be people that take care of the actual residents. And you can do things like tasting the food, making sure that it's up to snuff, that it doesn't just look good on paper, right? Take a look at what the activities are. Is it something that your loved one is going to be interested in? Maybe even sit in on what that looks like. And really understanding, again, what your wants and needs are, just like it would be for when you go to rent an apartment, right? Is it a big necessity, right? When you were going to look at your apartment or you were going to look at a house, did you want a pool, right? Did you want a barbecue, right? Whatever these kind of things are, right? Those are amenities that you were looking at for your home. Okay, so there's different sets of amenities, but what are the things that are important to you that you can see to make sure they're being dealt with, and to see again how those people are. Is there, if you walk in and there's absolute chaos and everything's dirty and everything smells, if they just say, "Oh, this is just a crazy day," look, it's probably not just a crazy day, right? They're trying to take you on a tour to show you the best version of the property, and so if they can't show you that, then you got to think, what's going to happen when I'm not here?
I would also add to take your time when you're going around these facilities. Don't just rush through like you would rush through rentals for looking for yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, 2 bed, 2 bath, boom, let's go. Take your time and enjoy, or try to participate in the facilities if you can, if they allow you to, figure out how everything's working. And as you said, I think the biggest thing is always ask the residents how they're feeling about the place and what their experience has been like. And talk to those people. Don't be shy about it, because you're making a decision for someone that you love.
Yeah, and hopefully it's going to be a decision for a long time, right? A lot of, as opposed to, again, skilled nursing, the stays in assisted living facilities can be very lengthy, right? There's residents that we have that have been there before we were even operating, right? They've been there for 5 or 10 years. And so this can be a very long-term decision and a long-term community they're going to be a part of. So you want to try and make sure that it's not just something that was done on a whim.
And how can families make sure they're getting transparent pricing and real value?
Be as transparent on your own end. And I think that's also sometimes a mistake that people can make, which is they try and hide what their loved one's needs are. And because they're trying to, whatever it is, stay in care level 1, and so they want to shy away from it. Everyone is ideally supposed to be good at what they do, and they're going to see these things. And whether they see it on day 1 or they see it on day 15, if it's not a fit and it's not appropriate, it doesn't serve anyone well. And so shying away from saying, hey, this is what my mom needs, these are her issues, this is where she really needs help, that can make sure that, again, it's the right fit for both parties. And when it's the right fit for both parties, there's a much higher chance of long-term success.
So I think this is the last question. If you had to give one piece of advice to someone searching for assisted living right now, what would it be?
To understand exactly what you are looking for.
Good advice.
Doug, right, do your own soul searching before you go out.
I love that. Definitely. It makes a lot of sense. Doug, for families listening right now who might be going through this, what would you want them to know that could change how they approach this decision?
Number one, you're not alone. There are a lot of people going through exactly what you're going through right now. I talk to people regularly. It's a very difficult time, and that's okay. It's going to be difficult because this is something that is brand new. And so to take your time and understand what you are doing so that you can feel the most secure, that you can feel like you've been educated, and that you can feel like you've made the right decision with the information that you had. It may be a daunting task, but it's something that you can accomplish. It's something that people do accomplish. But you're not alone in feeling that this is overwhelming and daunting. It's okay to feel that way, and to just try and make sure that you're aligning yourself with the right people.
Doug, this has been one of those conversations that hits close to home for a lot of people. And more importantly, it gives families clarity during a really difficult time. If you're listening right now and you're starting to ask those questions about assisted living, don't wait for the crisis moment. Get informed, take tours, and start having those conversations early. Doug and his team at Elevated Estates are doing incredible work, affordable, high-quality senior living communities in Florida, including their memory care facility in Newport Richey and their newly renovated assisted living community in downtown Brooksville. You can learn more or schedule a tour at elevatedestates.org.
Yes.
Doug, we're the best place for people to connect with you. Where's the best place?
Probably by email.
Email. And what's your email address?
Doug, D-O-U-G, at elevatedestates.org.
Yes, shoot him an email if you have any questions. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer every single one of those questions. And as always, if you got value from today's episode, make sure you subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with someone who might need it, because this is one of those conversations every family ends up having. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Roundtable. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Sir Lancelot's Real Estate Roundtable, where we've unveiled the mysteries of real estate together. Remember, in this kingdom of possibilities, every dream home is just a discussion away. I can help your real estate dreams come true. Just call me at 786-449-7518. Until our next roundtable, may your ventures be prosperous and your homes be filled with love and joy. Farewell, fellow knights of real estate.